Hi, welcome to this second video in the series Playing Turntables in a Band. This time we're talking about general considerations for technique and playing style when we take DJing and turntablism into a group setting. There's a fundamental problem with that integration that needs to be addressed in one way or another, and that is tempo. When you let go of that record, whatever's on there is going to play at a fixed speed. It makes our instrument slightly different from all the other instruments in a band. You know, if you're the drummer or the bass player, you make a physical gesture with your hands and a sound comes out. You know, you place every note, every drum hit by making a physical movement. And that means you have direct control over the placement of each sound that comes out. It's not like that for us. You know, we make a physical gesture, letting go of the record, and maybe a whole bar of music comes out, or 4 bars, or whatever. There's a real synchronization problem when everyone's used to just kind of jamming together and feeling each other's tempo and so on. And then you introduce this other instrument that doesn't quite work in the same way. The big exception to this, obviously, is scratching. That's the one area of turntable technique where we're the same as everybody else. We deliberately place every sound with a physical gesture. And that's why, as DJs who want to integrate with other live musicians, we always tend to gravitate towards scratching. You know, it's the obvious way to integrate yourself into that jam. There's another problem inherent in that solution. Most bands don't want loads and loads of scratching all the time on top of everything that they do. You know, scratching has a particular tonal quality to it. It's really well suited to being, you know, featured as a solo. You know, like for 16 bars, there's going to be scratching and that's going to be the focus of everybody's attention. But nobody wants to play in a band with someone who's just soloing on their instrument non-stop, right? So where you end up, if you just rely on that scratching solution, is either you're going to annoy everybody by playing too much, or you're going to not end up contributing that much to the overall sound. And that's okay. You know, the first couple of times I collaborated with other musicians live, I did end up having quite a lot of dead time on stage and not playing very much. And you know, that's perfectly fine. But you end up being kind of a bit of fluff on top rather than an integral part of that band's sound. Another solution to this tempo problem is for you to effectively be the drummer in the band. I mentioned in the last video that was basically how my collaboration with Rough Fields worked. You know, I was the band's drummer, but with turntables instead of a drum kit. And that is a way around the problem. You know, because everybody else then follows the tempo of what you're doing, rather than the other way around. I'm not going to be focusing on that solution in these videos, and that's for a couple of reasons. Firstly, because the turntablist as drummer is kind of the backbone of early hip hop. So there's already quite a lot of material out there about how that worked. Secondly, because I'm wanting to focus these videos around integrating yourself as a member of a traditional kind of band lineup, rather than kicking someone out of their band and replacing them, I'm looking for slightly different solutions and solutions that involve there being a drummer in the band as well. Another solution that we really ought to mention that makes all of this synchronization stuff just a non-issue is if everybody plays to a click. That is definitely a viable solution, and a couple of the bands that I've played in have gone down this route of playing to a click. However, that has tended to be, you know, for other reasons rather than just because they wanted to incorporate me in the band. And for me personally, it's always been important to be more versatile as a performer and as a collaborator than that. You know, I don't want the conversation around any potential collaboration to be, okay, so if you want me to get involved, you have to completely change the way that you do everything. and introduce this new thing that people probably aren't going to like very much. You know, it can work, but I'm more interested personally in finding ways that I can be useful to a band without them needing to completely rework the way that everything happens in that way. So the specific examples that we'll be looking at throughout the rest of the series are all basically different ways of answering this fundamental synchronization question and to becoming a more integral part of a band's sound than just being a bit of scratching on top every now and then. I do play scratch solos with the bands that I play with, of course, but there's not really much to explain in terms of how they work. So the stuff I'll be breaking down is the parts when I'm not scratching, starting on the next video with a completely different area of technique. See you on the next video. Thanks.